Melchizedek is a name that has, uh, for some obscure reason, been the subject of so much literature. In the early church
Mm-hmm.
fathers, um, even before the church era, you had vast commentary, like for example, from the pen of the Essenes, as we can see from copies of scripts in the Qumran caves, and they were very interested in this Melchizedek figure because they knew that he would align or intersect with the Messianic times. And in the early church, you had all kinds of speculation on who Melchizedek was and what his purpose was. And um, you have Syriac commentaries, you have Arabic commentaries. Just there was all kinds of speculation on who he is. Is he an angel? Was he a pre-incarnate Christ? Is he Shem? Which is a position is popular today among scholars. I I don't really get into all those speculations. I kind of take the side of Saint Cyril of Alexandria, where let's just stick to what the Bible says, and let's just deal with
Sure.
what the Bible says. Whatever else is cool about Melchizedek, we'll leave to discussions afterwards. And but Melchizedek is a figure that shows up mysteriously in Genesis chapter 14, and he shows up as a priest. He says the text says, Moses says he's priest of the Most High God, and that he blessed Abraham or Abram, and that he brought forth bread and wine, right? And it also says that Abram received received Melchizedek's blessing and then gave Melchizedek a tithe. And nothing else is really said. It's just a blessing upon the Abram and his people after a victory in war from the beginning of Genesis 14. And nothing else is really said about Melchizedek, but the name itself, Melchizedek, um, it comes from two Hebrew words. You've got Melchite, or milk comes from the Hebrew understanding of kingship. So almost all the English translations of the word um, milk is king in Genesis, for example. So all the kings in Genesis, Exodus, and forward have that word. And then Zedek or Siddiq comes from the Hebrew for justice, righteousness, in that community of words. So basically, the king of righteousness, and he's said to be the king of Salem, which we all know is short. Later Jerusalem comes from that Salem word, which means peace, tranquility. So the name itself is, he is the king of righteousness, king of peace, and he's a high priest of the Most High God. And one of the psalmists, or the prophet David, King David, acting as prophet, in one of the messianic psalms, depending on what psalm registry you're reading from, 109 or 110, David says that the Messiah, the coming future Messiah, will be a priest forever, according to the order of Melchizedek, which is so there's a foretelling of a coming priesthood that would be never ending in a certain way, a certain priest, rather, an individual who won't have a successor or a descendant priest. He himself will be a forever priest, according to the order of Melchizedek. And so some of the Jews beforehand, some of the prophets, could have seen or deduced that there was going to be a priesthood coming that would be not after the order of Aaron, or according to the Levite, um, the Levitical rule of the priesthood, but according to this Melchizedek figure from Genesis 14. Then in the New Testament, the only treatment we get of this is in the book of Hebrews, which I think it was written by St. Paul, but I gladly hear the opinions of others who want to speculate. St. Paul in the book of Hebrews shows that the logic of Genesis 14, or rather, he doesn't even go to what's said about Melchizedek in Genesis 14. He goes to what's not said about him, that he doesn't have an origin or an ending. Together with the fact that the messianic priest will be a forever priest, an eternal priest, according to the order of Melchizedek. And so what that assumes, basically it means that the law and the prophets themselves put an implied expiration date on the priesthood of the Old Testament, the Old Covenant, which means that out of that is implied a change of the law, a change of the covenant, change of the priesthood, pretty much everything. And the idea is that the Hebrews should not return to the Old Covenant because the Old Testament writings themselves put an expiration to give way for this Melchizedekian priesthood in Jesus Christ. So that's basically the testamental idea about
Right.
Melchizedek.